welcome back to Teaching Them. I'm Michael Keats. I have a lesson for you today for Easter. It's called the Easter Stations of the Cross. And this is the scriptural version, which I'll explain in just a few moments. So what are Stations of the Cross? You may not have heard of those before. This is a spiritual practice that some people think developed way back in maybe as early as the 300s AD. During that time, there was an emperor over Rome that was Constantine, and he legalized Christianity throughout all of his kingdom. At that time, it became safe for some people to make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And when they get there, they would walk the Via Dolorosa, which is the way of sorrow. It's the path that Jesus took on his way to the cross. And people wanted to identify with Jesus' suffering in those last few hours of his life. And so they would walk it. Sometimes they'd carry crosses, things like that. But it wasn't practical for everybody to make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And so they began to make replicas of the Via Dolorosa in their local areas. Well, the church started to get behind this, and in the 13th century, the Franciscans started to standardize it. The Franciscan order was the group that the Catholic Church approved to actually do the custodian privileges for all the holy sites in Jerusalem. And they noticed that people wanted to do this, and they wanted to take the experience back home to other people who couldn't do it. And so they standardized it and got it into 14 different stations. Stations would be events that happened in the last few hours of Jesus's life. That started to take off in lots of places. And so in 1371, Pope Clement XII approved the 14 stations. He kind of ratified these are the ones. And then he said it's okay to create these in local churches. And so churches started to create Stations of the Cross. You can go into lots of churches today and you might see them. Bigger churches might have very elaborate Stations of the Cross where they might have an alcove devoted to each of the 14 stations. But smaller churches often will have plaques up on the wall, and there'll be pictures, and you may have wondered, well, what is that? You may see that they're numbered oftentimes, but they depict different events during the last few hours of Jesus's life. Now, the Catholic Church, when they picked those 14 stations, they picked 8 that were biblical, and you can find a scripture related to those 8 stations. But then the other 6 were things that were more from tradition. And so we don't know for sure if all of those things happened. So in the exercise that I have developed, I've chosen to stick with what's called the scriptural Stations of the Cross, which is a modification on the original 14, and it's 14 stations of biblical events that happened that we can point to the actual scripture. And then I added a 15th one, which is Jesus's resurrection, because this is Easter, and we need to have that included in there as well. So in this exercise, what you'll be getting the kids to do is to participate in Jesus's last few hours of his life, the Passion of Christ. You can have them participate in a couple different ways. So I have a slideshow, and you can show them the slideshow. You could also print this out, and you could have them sort it into the correct order because they're not numbered. So the kids will have to kind of figure out from the story what happened first, what happened second, what happened third. Or you could put stations around the room, and then you could have the kids walk, kind of do a pilgrimage in the room from station to station, and then you could talk about what happened there. And so I've given you the scriptures on each slide so that you can actually go read those scriptures if you want to, or you can just tell it in a story narrative if that's a better way to go to capture the kids' attention. So definitely use all kinds of different ways, be creative with it, but let me take you through the slides so you can see which stations I've included in here. So the first one is Jesus' prayer in the garden. This is where he was in agony, and James and John and Peter were asleep, but the angels ministered to Jesus. Then there was the kiss, the betrayal of Judas, and the soldiers came to go get him. The third station is Jesus being tried before an illegal court at the Sanhedrin. The fourth station is Peter denying Jesus 3 times in the courtyard. Then you have the next station, which is Jesus being tried in front of Pilate. Then Jesus is beaten, whipped, mocked, and crowned with thorns. Then Jesus carries his cross to Golgotha. Simon of Cyrene. Cyrene is a place in Africa, the northern part of Africa. And so Simon of Cyrene came and helped. I don't know if he wanted to or not, but the soldiers made him to help because he was passing by. Then Jesus doesn't greet, but he talks to the women of Jerusalem in their grief. And then Jesus is crucified between two thieves. Then Jesus talks to the one thief who is penitent, who says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And he says, today you'll be with me in paradise. Then Jesus talks to John and his mom, and he says, mother, here's your new son, and son, here's your mother. Then Jesus says, it's finished, and he gives up his life. Then Jesus is taken down from the cross, and his body is prepared for burial. And then finally, the women show up at the tomb early that Sunday morning, and they realize that Jesus is gone, and an angel, or maybe two angels, speaks to them and tells them, why do you look for the living among the dead? He is risen. So those are the 15 stations that are included in this. And it can be it's definitely a somber experience, but as we approach Easter and you want the kids to know, what are we really celebrating at Easter? This can be a good way for them to understand the story and what really happened, and a way to identify, sometimes in a physical way, if you're walking around to different stations, it can be a way to identify with the suffering of Christ during that time and to meditate on what he paid in order to free us from our sin and to give us new life. So I hope you use this and have fun with it, and please leave me some comments. Let me know how it goes. You can download the slides at teachingthem.org. I'll see you next time. God bless.